Hello. On this video, we will pick up from where we left last time. We will talk about the structures after stomach, starting with small and large intestine. Then we will briefly review three important accessory organs: liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. So we will start with the small intestines. These are about 2 to 4 meters long and have a small diameter of about 2.5 to 4 centimeters. For those of you who prefer imperial scale, we're talking about 7 to 13 feet in length and approximately from 1 to 1.6 inches of diameter. Small intestines start at the pyloric sphincter, which you might remember from our discussion of stomach. This diagram probably rings bells. And they end where large intestines start at the ileocecal valve, which precedes the cecum, the first part of the large intestine. What is especially noteworthy is that small intestine is the major site of digestion and absorption. Remember, very little of this happened in the stomach because of the acidic environment, preventing activation of many enzymes, thick mucus layer, and a lack of microvilli, which resulted in limited surface area inside the stomach. So I think that the next thing that we should do is to review the three parts of the small intestine. And these are duodenum, jejunum, and ileum. How do you remember this? Well, think of DJ Ill as a mnemonic, a really cool DJ in a club. Cool as sick. So let's start with the first one. Duodenum is about 25 centimeters, so about 10 inches long. First part of the small intestines. It curves around the head of the pancreas on the right side, beginning from the pyloric sphincter. And it is here where a lot of secretions are added into the digested material from the liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. We will have a look of that in a second. Just keep this picture in mind until we get to talk about the major accessory organs. Next, the second part of the small intestine is the jejunum. This is at 2.5 meters long, so that would be about 8 feet, I think. It actually runs attached posteriorly by the mesentery. And the last part is, of course, ileum. So I often get asked, how do you know where jejunum ends and ileum starts? And the truth is that there is no clear spot of transition. It is more of a conceptual change from one to another. Anyway, ileum is about 3.6 meters long, which is approximately 6 feet, I think. This is the last part, so it ends at a point where small intestine attached to the large intestine. This is at the lower right part of the abdomen. And since this first part of the large intestine is called cecum, the sphincter that is located here is known as ileocecal sphincter. One thing that we notice with the small intestine is that these structures are especially well adapted to nutrition absorption. And this is by having a very large surface area. In fact, it is approximately 200 square meters, which equals to the size of a tennis court. This is possible because of adaptations such as having a lot of folds, villi, and small villi known as microvilli. And of course, the large length of the small intestine too. Let's have a look at the secretions of the small intestine. Mucus is secreted by the goblet cells. And then we have a range of digestive secretions. Peptidase breaks down peptides, as the name suggests. So these are converted into amino acids. Sucrase, maltase, and lactase in turn break down more complex disaccharides into simpler monosaccharides. And then we have lipase, which breaks, as the name suggests, fats. And fats are broken into fatty acids and glycerols. And then there are many hormones, which I will leave you to study independently. Now we will shift our focus onto the large intestine. Large intestine start with cecum. This is the first part, right after ileum of small intestines. Hence the sphincter that separates large and small intestines is known as ileocecal. From cecum, we have a part that faces inferiorly, known as appendix. You may have heard about someone getting their appendix inflamed and needing to get it removed, right? Well, if that is the case, why would we have a structure like this that is not really needed, but is prone to issues? And issues which can become fairly serious. Well, although we do not really need appendix these days, one of the best accepted theories is that it was back in the day useful. And that's where the bacteria that digest plant-based material was stored. So this was at the time when the human diet consisted much more of plants. But as this is no longer the case, it is slowly disappearing over evolution, but this has not yet happened quite yet. So it is believed that it's a kind of an evolutionary remain. The next part is colon, and this is the most prominent part, often the one that people think of when they think of large intestines. In a way, one could say that it frames the abdominal region, running more or less on the edges, while small intestines are more central. Well, different parts of the colon are named accordingly. First, ascending colon, which climbs on the right side. And this runs from the inferior abdominal cavity to the superior right. Then superiorly running from the right to left side. Transverse colon. Coming down on the left side, the descending colon. And at the end, sigmoid colon, which makes a bit of an S-shaped curvature inferiorly and more medially. And the final part, which is I want us to discuss here, is the rectum, which with its 3 valves controls the passage of the feces. So these are our parts of the large intestine. Let's discuss a little bit about what its function. Well, this is where the water and electrolytes are absorbed back to the body from the chyme that passes in this tube. So it is during the large intestine where the chyme will change into feces, which are dry material that body cannot use. We also have in large intestine a lot of beneficial flora. This consists of thousands of different types of bacteria that have taken over, especially the colon. And these are useful for us, so we want to maintain the good intestinal flora. The next thing that I want to mention are the metabolic functions within the large intestine. These include fermentation, where otherwise indigestible carbohydrates are processed. The downside of the production is unpleasant gases that I'm sure that we all have been exposed at least at some point. The other thing that large intestine plays an important metabolic function in is the vitamin B and K synthesis. And of course, we need to keep the bacterial flora in check so that we get rid of the harmful pathogenic bacteria. This is largely possible by promoting the colonization of positive flora so that there is no more space for the pathogenic ones. And of course, the immune system plays a role in this as well. So at large, to summarize, very little food breakdown occurs in the large intestine, and their role is more of the reabsorption of water. So now it's time for us to look at the three important accessory organs: liver, gallbladder, and pancreas. We will talk about each of these and relate their functions to the digestive processes. Let's start with the liver. So liver is located at the upper right abdominal quadrant, below the diaphragm. It is the largest gland in the body, weighing around 3 pounds on average. It consists of 4 primary lobes: right, left, caudate, and quadrate. The falciform ligament shown here with an arrow separates the larger right and smaller left lobes. It also suspends liver from the diaphragm and the anterior abdominal wall. Round ligament, in turn, is a remnant of the fetal umbilical vein and runs along the free edge of the falciform ligament. What I want us to focus on, though, is the bile ducts. After all, the production of the bile is the main digestive function of the liver. So let's have a look at those. Common hepatic duct runs from the liver. Cystic duct then again connects to and from the gallbladder. And finally, bile duct is formed by the union of the common hepatic and cystic ducts. So I mentioned that production of bile was the main digestive function of the liver. The bile, which is secreted by the liver, is especially important for digesting fats. And as we saw, it leaves the liver via ducts and then gets stored in the gallbladder. So I guess that a reasonable question would be then that what other functions liver may have? Can you think of any? Well, there should be many that you can think. In fact, I once attempted to list all that I could think of, and once I got to around 100 functions, I gave up. Some of the most important ones are, though, metabolic functions, such as storing energy and also storing glycogen and vitamins, filtering blood to remove old red blood cells, and of course detoxing. For example, alcohol and drugs, and then the production of bile, which was our main interest in this module. Now that we have looked a fair bit of liver, it is time to move on to discuss gallbladder. So gallbladder is a thin-walled muscular sac located on the ventral surface of the liver. And it is, of course, the site where the bile produced by the liver is stored and concentrated. And this is done further by absorbing water and ions. We also see that its structure with its many honeycomb folds allows it to expand significantly as it fills. And then finally, the release of bile happens through muscular contractions, which then lead the bile to be released to the cystic duct, which then flows into the bile duct. And a clinically relevant condition that I want to mention here is, of course, the gallstones. In these, the cholesterol is escaping the bile and crystallizing, and this can cause an obstruction and become very painful. So there are quite a few approaches to treatment: using drugs that dissolve these crystals, using sound waves to break the stones, or laser, or of course we may need to perform a surgery. So that's it about gallstones and gallbladder. Now, let's look at the pancreas. It is located mostly retroperitoneally, deep to the greater curvature of the stomach. The head of pancreas is encircled by the duodenum, as we saw earlier. What is interesting about pancreas is that it is one of the very few glands in the body that serve both exocrine and endocrine function. The exocrine function, which we are interested in digestion, is the production of the pancreatic juice. This is the most complete digestive secretion and gets released to the duodenum via hepatopancreatic ampulla. And this watery alkaline secretion neutralizes the acidic contents released from the stomach. Remember, many of the digestive secretions were unable to function in the acidic environment of the stomach, but now they definitely do a great job in the small intestines. There is a bunch of digestive enzymes in the pancreatic juice, such as proteases for protein, amylase for carbohydrates, lipase for lipids, and nucleases for nucleic acids. And of course, we then have our endocrine function, which is secretion of insulin and glucagon by pancreatic islet cells. So I think that this is it for our videos on the digestive system. I hope that they have helped you on reviewing the content of this module. See you soon again.